explain to you guys. Organizational security model. What is, if you were just trying to think of the word itself, I mean, how would you try to, let's say you were coming into a situation where you had no idea what you were getting into.
Like right now.
Like right now. There you go. You come into it, and all of a sudden, hey, boom, you find out a little bit of information about the company or the customer, and now you figure that you're a fish out of water, right? Maybe you have some experience in a similar type of industry, but not in this specific type of industry. So what do? What do you go out and do? You do a little research, you find out what's the best practice for the industry, and you figure out what's called the organizational security model here, specifically to try to integrate as many components or controls to what is called the comprehensive security model. And in the world of information security, what we try to do, let's just say here that we have a big pile of gold. Okay, I'm just going to draw my big pile of gold right here. Okay, so the big pile of gold, all shiny and stuff. Like that. So if I got the big pile of gold, what do I want to try to do to protect this thing? Well, first I'm going to do is I'm going to put some sort of control around this asset that I have. I'm going to put, I don't know, maybe get in a vault, let's just say. All right? That's the first line of control. All right? What about the second line of control? What would be maybe as we move from within and spatially diffuse out, what would be the second control that we could put in place here?
Access to the vault.
Okay, so maybe we implement biometrics or something like that. I remember there was a cartoon movie called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Nice. Great.
You seen that?
For kids.
Me too. So the one dude, have you seen that? They're using biometrics. The one dude puts his butt on the biometric skin.
Oh yeah. I didn't pass.
Yeah. So it was a little wet there, but anyway, he puts the biometrics to get access to the vault. What would be the next step that we may want to look at as we go out from here?
Access to vault area.
Okay, so maybe you see in like some of the James Bond movies here, maybe actually put like guards here, right, to access vault area. And so you as you go out here, we can do n number of rings from the center to try to protect our Fort Knox that we have. And really what we call this is onion security. And also synonymous with rings. So ring type of security or onion security. Specifically, you'll hear people say in the business that you put as many controls in place that you can afford that's practical for what you're trying to protect. How much can you afford? How much money you got? Right? Well, if you got a bunch of money, you probably want to protect that, right? But onion security, you hear people say, we're going to peel back the layers of the onion, try to figure out how many different types of controls we need to put in place to make this thing happen. And that just depends on specifically what you have that you're trying to protect. And how much money does your customer have, or how much money do you have to put those mitigations in place? And it's really different for every customer that's out there. Okay, so with an organizational security model, That specifically is what we're talking about here. We try to have those integrated pieces that talk to one another that assure us, information assurance, right? They assure us that we are protected. Maybe, as we spatially diffuse out here, you got Barney Big Nuts over here sitting, CEO. He has a dashboard. It shows him that, hey, X, Y, and Z controls. They got the Facebook like on it. They're ready to go. Everything's 100% running, no issues. But he's way over here removed and actually can get a peek in at any given time to specific things that are happening within the organization. Uh, so how do we do that? Like, how do we figure that out? If you're going in and you're trying to learn how to be smarter about coming up with risk and figuring out how you do risk, how can you do that? Well, typically the first thing that we'll do with risk management, whether the management is specifically in a DoD framework, or maybe it's in your house. And I don't know what specifically you, you're trying to protect, but I always think about probably the biggest risk that we do each and every day is getting to the car, right? For me, I was involved in head-on collision back in June 26, 1999. So it's been almost 16 years since I was in a head-on collision. And I think about, at that time, um, not even thinking that I would ever be in that sort of situation. But one of the biggest risks that we face is getting in the car every day. And a lot of times we take that for granted. So that's something that we accept as a risk. We don't live in a little house on the prairie anymore, right? We don't need to walk from A to Z. Maybe you hitch a ride, maybe you ride the bike, but chances are you're going to drive. And that's an accepted risk that we put into place. There's a cost for that risk. That cost means that, hey, how safe is your car? How much do you pay in insurance? How much is your car payment? Uh, but also, what's the cost if you get into an accident? Are you going to get a broken leg? Are you going to get broken nose? Are you going to get glass all over you? Well, that's kind of a grim assessment. But what we usually will do is this thing that's called a cost benefit analysis, or CBA. So the cost benefit analysis comes into play when you're starting to do a risk assessment. So if you remember earlier when we were talking about the different nodes, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. So as you're going through and trying to quantify as a project lead how much to quote, how much to realistically quote for a particular project, what you need to do is probably some sort of cost benefit analysis on that, right? You talked about PMI earlier. Yeah, same sort of thing. So with risk assessments, we're going to do it in vulnerability assessment or penetration testing, or coming out and doing a non-interested third party for the agent of the certification authority for the Army. What we'll do is we'll come in and do a CBA. We'll do a gap assessment. We'll figure out what deficiencies different systems have, and then report on those. And if the system does not have deficiencies, then we're not doing our job, because there's a good chance, almost 100% chance, every system that's out there has something that's wrong with it. Somebody either chose to cut a corner because they ran out of time, or maybe they didn't know how to do it. And one of the biggest vulnerabilities that we have in the industry is misconfigured systems, misconfigured servers, or misconfigured applications. Now, why do I say that? What do I mean by misconfigured? What do you guys think that?
Then, I don't know, I think about configuration management and X amount of baseline configurations that we have, and confusing, what accreditation went with what software, or what mitigation procedure went with what risk.
Okay, you're too smart for me and my naive approach right here to try to just break it down a little bit. I mean, that's advanced compared to what I was thinking here. When I think about that, I'm thinking about you hire somebody fresh out of college, or maybe an intern, or even a mid-level person that maybe it's their second job, but they're making 60, 70, 80K, so they're making a good salary. But what happens is a lot of times you trust that particular analyst or engineer or business intelligence person with that they have integrity and that they're going to do the right thing. And what usually happens in reality is that they'll go through and install a product that maybe they don't have the right amount of expertise associated with that. And because they do that, they start to install the product, and what do they end up doing whenever they're installing a product? Accepting the default configurations, right? Next, 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 next. It's magically working. And as the project managers that are out there, you, as a naive analyst, hey, look what I got. I got this thing working. So the project manager is going to say, what? What's the project manager going to say?
Congrats, move on.
Yeah, let's move on, right? It's working. So they just accepted all the default settings, maybe no encryption or no, everything's going over port 80, clear text. So there's nothing special about it. Yeah, it's working. But now that's the foundation of all the things that are about to come. And it just got put into production because the naive young person, or maybe even an old person, would have done that. And what SANS tells us, what OWASP tells us, and these are major information security things in the world. What NIST tells us, what Carnegie Mellon tells us, is that misconfigured systems is still the number one issue that we have in the world, and that's because of what I just said. And believe it or not, we still have to put in our proposals time to fix that stuff, because it still happens. Whenever we're going through and prototyping stuff, first thing is let's get it running. Let's get it prototype. Let's get it communicating back and forth. And because you do that as lickety split, most of the time, that's going to be the misconfigured systems. You're not using encryption. You're not using, VPN or.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw and experienced in doing the application that configured, my vendor provided the code to you, and they failed to tell you that they've got a back end connected, that they're sending whatever you're doing to somewhere in Europe, and and then there's this code it's this code that I didn't tell you about, that if you don't correct it right, it's gonna do something else. That's the problem I run into.
Yeah.
And I imagine everybody else does the same thing.
Well, and what you just said, Hugh, is some of the customers that I deal with, that's one of their main reasons for not wanting to consume web services or push stuff up to the cloud, is because of what you just said right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, hey, I don't know where that's hosted. I don't know who has access to that. How do I trust that? How do I know that you're not going to share that information with the Chinese? And that's one of the main things that we did. We actually we went to a sponsored lunch by another company here in town recently, and uh, it was interesting to see uh, they're a Microsoft Azure cloud service provider, and it was interesting to see. I knew a little bit of how much rigor Microsoft put into doing those third-party assessments to their cloud, but seeing who does them and the frequency that they're done to ensure the trust, get people's trust and show integrity that they have. Hey, you can trust us with this data. Um, it's impressive. It's impressive. They have some of the best and brightest security staff in the world, just like Facebook does. I hate to even say that as a Facebook hater right there, but I mean, they got the money, $700 a share, or Google has the money, $700 a share. Apple has the money. Amazon's got the money to invest in getting the best and brightest people to try to think like the bad guy, adversarial, and the red team. And so you try to pretend like you're the red team to assess or work with assessors to do a third-party audit, and from that, usually you can get those misconfigured systems like we were talking about. They just come right to the top, because immediately when you scan a network, you can see a lot of those immediately. So, all right. So we talked a little bit about what you can do as far as the planning purposes. This is simple blocking and tackling right here with the change control and change management. If you are not familiar with these right here, these are pretty basic, and really, as an organization comes into play, these should be components inside of your systems engineering management plan. And really, the RMF will go through and just make sure that you're crossing the T's and dotting your I's by saying, hey, what kind of controls you have in place that are doing these right here: separation of duties, change request systems, configuration management, and then do you have specific policies and procedures and processes that are in place to manage this stuff? So give me why you would use separation of duties. Why would you put that in place?
Check and balance.
Okay. What's that mean?
The same guy that's doing testing and evaluation.
Perfect. Perfect. So yeah, just kind of scratching the back that we were talking about earlier with the different process steps there, the implementation and the assessment. You don't want that same person. A lot of times in the industry, you say that you don't want the same person that is signing the check to be able to cash that check as well.
Right.
You want somebody else to do that. So I think that these other ones are kind of straightforward, but so with our particular implementations, when we're going through and doing this cost-benefit analysis, specifically, we can put data into different classifications here. And in a lot of the other seminars that we do, we go into a little bit of a deep dive into some of these. What can we put here? What can we put there? And what's considered classified, what unclassified, FOUO. But really, you're going through that cost-benefit analysis. This is a component of doing that data classification. We talked a little bit earlier about going through and know who you're dealing with here and doing a background check. One of the things that we're going to do right here up on the overhead real quick is we're going to do a quick and dirty assessment.